And welcome to a very special episode
Tuesday episode
of Tuesdays with...
with Meg.
No, we have to switch it because it's a Tuesday.
Well, okay, with
Thom.
and Meg.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's Tuesday.
Tuesdays with Thom and Meg.
It. Yeah.
We had a very busy week last week on a local mission trip with 12 middle schoolers.
Which was fun. I
And
almost wore my
time-consuming.
crisis control T-shirt today, and then changed my mind at the last minute.
I almost wore mine too, so that would have been
Oh, really?
funny.
That
Yeah.
would have been funny.
Yeah, well, and then I decided on the $2 Goodwill skirt to test it out.
Good for you.
I don't think it's a summer skirt, though. It's very warm.
Okay.
So, Tuesdays with Thom and Meg.
A one-off. We'll be back to Monday.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh my goodness. I just realized if we're going to be back to Monday, then we've got to do another one of these conversations this week. Because you'll be on vacation.
Because I'm going on vacation. Unless we film it Monday and put it out Monday.
Which is always a possibility now.
Oh, that's funny. Wow. Okay. So, last time, we're slowly working through I don't even know if we're working through it.
We're not working through it.
at
We're just looking at bits and pieces.
the foundations of Presbyterian polity. And last time we looked at, I don't remember.
F-1.0301 about the calling of the church. That's some of the aspects there of what it said.
Yes, okay, yeah. That's what I thought. I wasn't quite sure.
And so this week,
This time.
we are at F-1.0304, the great ends of the church, which at one of the churches I served, I guess that was Sparta, they actually had the banners. They made the banners.
Oh.
And so they were up. They fit perfectly along the sanctuary and the windows and the way that was put together. So
And it were these things?
Yes, it was from here.
specifically?
Yeah, yeah. So it was interesting. We'd had them up and around the sanctuary.
That's cool. Those are good things to look at.
They are.
Very good things to be aware of.
They are, and I don't know how long they've. Oh, it says right here, this statement of the great ends of the church, slightly edited here, came from the United Presbyterian Church of North America, which united with the Presbyterian Church in the United States of America in 1958. The statement was then made a part of the Constitution of the United Presbyterian Church in the United States of America, as the United Body was called. This now classic statement was adopted by the United Presbyterian Church of North America in 1910, following various actions between 1904 and 1910, looking forward to the revision of the church's constitution. Footnotes.
I like footnotes.
Footnotes are great things.
Most of the time.
So the great ends of the church. This
Yes.
is, simple statements that kind of help us, again, focus what are our purposes
Right.
for being.
What's the mission of the church?
What is the mission of the church? And so what's interesting for us as we go through these today, talk about them, is, well, what do these words mean to us? Because they're just statements. There's not a whole lot of, this is the way you have to understand it. I mean, they're statements, and like with any words,
Right.
they can mean some different things to different people.
Right. All depends on what your brain does when you read it.
So from your point of view, sometimes where you're coming from.
Yeah. But some of them seem the second one is very straightforward to me. But the first one,
Okay.
the proclamation of the gospel for the salvation of humankind.
So what does that mean to you? Because again, we've got words that we throw around a lot.
Right.
Gospel, salvation. What does that mean? I mean, proclamation to me is a little easier, but
Right.
sometimes gospel is that just the 4 books. I mean, what is the gospel? What is what is the good news that the church is to bring into the world?
Well, I think in my brain instantly says the good news of Jesus Christ and his ministry.
Which
and all that.
is what?
To love and care for the marginalized and oppressed.
Okay, so
to
if
hang out
that's...
with and eat with the sinners and the outcasts and the fringe society.
Mm-hmm. If that's what our gospel, what we're defining as what the gospel is, I think that's what the whole Matthew 25 movement is trying to do, saying, to us, this is the good news.
Right.
The kind of, we want to be the kind of church who follows those things, like you were saying, the feeding of the hungry, it's basically
hungry, thirsty, sick, tired, poor,
right,
imprisoned,
right, and trying to make the world, by serving them, salvation to us then is lifting the world by serving the least among us. So if that's the gospel, whereas as we've talked a lot before, broadly, salvation is, how do I punch my ticket to get to heaven after I die?
Right. How do I do the things?
But if that's not what we're saying, then we're not doing the whole, I've got to make sure you say the prayer, come forward and give your life, be baptized correctly. We're not doing that, the Baptist
right,
stuff.
well, because then that assumes that
Southern
then
Baptist.
I then have the power
Right.
to save folks.
We're not saving you in that
Right.
way.
Right. It's above my pay grade.
Right. But very much for, again, the Southern Baptists and folks kind of that ilk, that's the way I think they would interpret it. That
yeah,
line.
it's like I do have the power to.
Right. We have to somehow tell them about Jesus, because and then they somehow confess fealty to Jesus and the religion that was created
Jesus
post Jesus, and then that's what gets them to heaven, and that's the salvation we just want to save your immortal soul.
Right.
But I think, as we talk about it, our vision is a little different. Salvation of humankind is not just something that happens after you die. It's more, I think we're more interested in seeing the teachings and the vision of Jesus that are put forth in the Gospels.
Right. And how do you then live that out?
Right. In operation in our world. How do we see that? And how does that then save the world from itself?
Right.
Save the world from its own sins, save the world from greed. How does the gospel save the world from consuming greed, or how does it save us from, these other, let's call them works of the flesh? Since we've been in that area on Sunday,
hanging out with Paul.
Right, and it's that kind of contrast.
Yeah.
That's the way I, as a minister, would approach that
sentence. Yeah. That makes sense to me. Like, it's like, I know it's not me saving people, us saving people. We have to save the world. It's like our job is to teach and share and show the gospel.
Right.
And that's what...
discipleship.
Right.
If I do have a job, it's to help people realize and live out their place in this world as a disciple of Christ.
Right.
And to do that, you have to live by these certain principles.
Right.
You can't compromise
there are things that you have to do.
If you compromise that too far, at what point are you no longer a disciple of Christ, but you're actually doing something else?
Right.
And I think we see a lot of that in Christianity today. Is this Christ-like, or is this some other
ideology
that you're attaching to,
right,
and giving a name.
You're dragging Jesus along.
You're dragging Jesus into this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's not very Christ-like.
Right. The shelter, nurture, and spiritual fellowship of the children of God. Read, i.e., everybody.
Children of God. That's right. It doesn't necessarily just mean the people within the church.
Right.
So it may begin with the
church.
folks with us in the church. I mean, I think it's important for us to create a certain type of community here.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to think of church more in that community way of thinking than a consumer way of thinking, where you come and you consume your religion, but it's more about connecting people. I mean, to me, any programs that we do should be opportunities for folks to do things.
Yeah.
And even our style of government. I mean, if you have an idea, you should be able to bring it into the community and let the community wrangle it out, and maybe we're going to go that and do that.
We'll go in that direction.
Like with mission ideas. I know that's the way a lot of our mission work here. Somebody comes on the committee, they've got an idea, they've got something they want to try to maybe do, and they talk it out with the committee. Is that something we can do here? Or, and if they're really worried, it might find its way up to the session.
Right.
But you can bring your ideas. You can where you're being called, or your passion, or whatever phrase you want to use. But to me, that's a much more community thinking.
Well, and that's like when you think about like the early church, like that was very community based.
Mm-hmm. That early Acts church.
Yeah, and so like it almost becomes a shame when the church loses the communal aspect.
Yeah.
And that like when you don't like see that in churches.
Right.
It's like, oh, I think you missed something.
I do. I mean, if it just is consumer, if it's individual consuming, or consumer type model, I do think you lose something.
Yeah. Like you need the people, and you need the community. There's no better.
Yeah.
It's lately I'm just like, that's such a buzzword that everyone likes to throw around. And so then how do you see it as, it's like you have to pay attention to when it's the real deal. Because everyone likes to use that word now. It's like one of those hot buttons. It's like you hear it and you're like, oh yeah.
I think of like here at Parkway, and I see this at other churches. There was something, our older members, they did something well with church.
Right.
They were able to be together, and they raised their families together. And I mean, you come into a church like Parkway, and there are these deep bonds between people because they
know each other.
They know each other, and they really have shared their lives with each other. They didn't just come and consume the product of Parkway together. They interacted with one another and did things on a social basis.
Well, it's like you watch what they show up for now.
Right.
It's anything that gets them. They show up to eat together. They show up to drink adult beverages and talk about the word together.
Which is fine.
They show up to be together.
Right. And to me, that's such a vital piece of
and not
community.
just on Sunday.
And not just on Sunday.
Right. It's like they find the time and the ways to get together, to be together.
And I think that's why that's been what's been difficult, and what we're trying to do, in that we're trying to create those opportunities for the next generation who's younger to maybe form some of those same kind of bonds. I think the world's the world's different than it was in the 70s and such, and 80s, when these folks were really kind of doing their thing. I mean, I think of being a kid in the church, and when we were in New Jersey, as a kid, my family was a part of this big group who had kids all the same same age. There was a variety of them.
You were
but
always
we were all
things.
together, and this group of families
Right.
went to church together, and we did things together. And
We all
had
probably
Christmas.
sat together.
Yeah, we had Christmas things. We went
Right.
camping during the summer together. I mean, and that was such a great, happy period of my life.
Right.
I would love to be able to, through the church, allow something like that to happen again.
Right.
Those sort of deep relationships.
Right. Do you think that it has to start in the walls of the church?
What do you mean by that?
Like with my title as evangelist
Mm-hmm.
and attempting to create and form small groups in the community.
Right.
It's like I'm coming from the church, but my thought process is to meet people where they're at,
Right.
to bring church to them. Because I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it really does have nothing to do with the building.
So if you mean within the walls of the church, no, I don't.
Right,
think
like
that's
it's in the
that much.
physical space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't think we can make it happen. We have to make opportunities, and a lot of it is, sometimes maybe you're seeing it now. You'll have those one or two people who are just really good at connecting and helping people connect with other people, and it doesn't have to be us.
Right.
I think again, a lot of what we do is to create a certain atmosphere for things to happen, to say yes to people.
Right.
I think it's important for us to say yes and not say no. The church is
right,
and I'm in charge, and this is what
right.
it's going to be. Saying yes to people.
Well, because you see that play out in other churches,
Right.
and it's just like, oh, don't know about that, but thank you.
But a lot of it is, somehow that wonderful blend of people who come together and people's willingness to be open to friendships like that.
Right.
I think that's part of what's difficult. I think as our current generation, your generation, maybe have sometimes some difficulty thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you have your family and you're doing your family thing, you tend to think only about your family.
Right. We're in our little.
Right, and as one unit, and it may be sometimes a little harder to think bigger.
Right. To just reach out to the next family and be like, hey.
Yeah. I don't know if people hang out like they used to. I don't know if certain things, or I think you lost like a lot of weekends or downtime. I think a lot. I think the downtime of one generation sort of disappeared a little bit. We don't have the same amount of downtime as we used to.
Right.
But that's a feeling. I mean,
that's real, and
I don't have any.
That.
I don't have any scientific whatevers. I'm not ready in a sociological. That's just a feeling. I feel like we're always
go, do. Yeah.
That people just don't have
real downtime.
Barbecues.
Right.
Invite your neighbors over, and we just sit around and eat and gab, or
we do that.
Christmas parties.
We don't do that. Or if it's a Christmas party, it's like an office Christmas party.
Right.
So it's like, which like we don't do, but like,
it's like houses got bigger, but now we don't invite people
right.
into
It's
our
like,
homes.
And it's really funny when everyone has you have the
Let me
dining room.
Yeah.
With all the table and all the chairs and the cabinet full of the fine stuff, the china and the silverware and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, do you use it? No.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
It just sits there. You just look at it and go, oh, that's pretty.
I think we've gotten way off track. Let's get back to where we were. But again, helping people find a place and connection.
Yeah.
To me, that's a lot of that shelter, nurture, and spiritual fellowship.
Yeah.
Again, nurture to me is what you were saying with the meeting the people where they are.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand and interpret that word.
Yeah, that's how I interpret that word. The maintenance of divine worship. This one's interesting to me.
Oh, really? I was going to say, well, this one's kind of, yep. Okay, next.
Well, maintenance is just maintaining. So it's just like, just keep doing what you're doing.
Well,
I mean, it works.
We're
so
the place of worship.
Yeah. Yeah. Of divine worship. Okay, the preservation of the
truth.
you're
going to move on?
We're
going to move on?
on?
Okay. To the fourth one, because this is going to be this is going to be interesting. Preservation of the truth.
Well, yeah, because in this day and age, 50 million people have a different idea of what the truth is. So what kind of truth are we talking? Because even when you talk about the Bible and Christianity, it's like you're hard pressed to find a group of people with the same idea of what preserving the truth is, or what the truth itself even is.
Right.
So it's like, do we preserve our truth?
That's what I was that's what I was thinking. Is it our truth?
Right.
Or
because this just says the truth.
Right.
Ooh, hey, belly.
I
ate breakfast this morning. It won't stop.
I wonder if that got picked up.
I hope not. Yeah, preservation of the truth.
The truth. And when you mentioned our truth, I think, again, that's where I think that's a problem today, is we're so wound up in our truth and making our truth the universal truth.
Mm-hmm.
You lose the humility that's needed to actually approach truth. I mean, if you can't start out thinking, well, maybe I'm wrong, or is there something I'm not seeing?
Right. What am I missing?
If you're not open to something else, I don't think you can preserve it. I mean, that easily looks like it can become indoctrination. Preserve the truth, I think you're creating an atmosphere where you can ask questions and you can, because even if it's, well, Scripture is our foundation, but Scripture has interpretation, and we have to be aware of our interpretations. Right. So even thinking of that, because I was thinking about what we've been trying to do, like when we first started the Mark study. Mm-hmm. The whole point of that was to say, could this story be different from what you've always thought it and assumed that it is?
The way it's been taught to you and told to you over and over and over again.
Because Mark starts his gospel very differently.
Right.
Can Jesus not know everything?
Right.
Can Jesus be, when he's confronted with the Syrophoenician woman, can he be taken by surprise and impressed by her? Right. Or, no, my Jesus has to always be in control and knows everything. And in charge of the situation. And in charge of the situation. Right. Can there be this? Can there be that? And when you look at the text, what is the truth of the text versus what I'm telling the text its truth has to be. Right. Well, yeah, and that's like scriptural interpretation, and like the big thing that everyone in seminary makes sure to harp on is anytime you take the theology or the story, whatever it is you're looking at, and you make it so it bumps you up and knocks someone else down, that's wrong. Then what are you looking at?
Right. Yeah. That's not, anytime you interpret the text to do such a thing like that, it's like, no. Right. What truth are you then preserving? So but I do like that, maybe now because I've studied two very ancient languages, I have more of an appreciation for articles in the English language. So it's when we choose to leave in words like the or a or an or like those kinds of things,
Right.
it's like that means something. That means something. So it's like the truth versus our truth, I think, is a big deal.
But, you know, but preservation is important. What is the act of preservation? I was thinking of when they preserve paintings and such.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is it's a lot of removal of things to get back down to the original painting.
Right, to what it.
They remove all that stuff that was layered over time from the air or from whatever has somehow become a part of the painting.
Right.
You got to take that off.
Right.
And
those weird layers, those extra layers that don't belong.
And in that sense, you're trying to preserve. So what does that mean? Again, a lot of these words, what does this word mean in action?
Right.
How do you preserve? How do you preserve the truth? And you can work at both of those. How about the next one? What does that immediately say to you?
We've messed up. The promotion of social righteousness.
Uh-huh.
We live in a very unjust and unrighteous world right now.
Okay. But for the people who are fighting for a certain, let's use the phrase, level of decorum? No.
Mm-mm.
What am I looking for? What is righteousness? What is social righteousness? I guess. You know, some would say, well, social righteousness is, and then they outline what everyone needs to be. Is that what it is? You need to
like Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Like that kind of what everyone needs?
No. The way, okay, yes, but with morals. So again, I think
But that's Bloom. So you need, psychologically thinking, you need Maslow's hierarchy in order to get the next part. So all the basic needs need to be met before you can even think about the next part.
Mm-hmm.
Like the moral part and the ethics part that people have.
I think we are not connecting.
Okay. Let's try again.
Do you want to try again, or do you want to talk more about what social righteousness means to you? Maybe that way maybe I can find a way to connect that way.
No, we can try again.
I'll try again.
We can try again.
So, you know, again, when we're looking at contrast, when we read this versus when other folks read this of a different Christian ilk, social righteousness could mean, you know, and that's what they're fighting for.
Right.
Is their list of what social righteousness is about. And usually it's, you know, from our point of view, we may look at it and say, that's Pharisaic.
Right.
You know, that's based not on what we might see in Scripture, but they're like, oh, no, that's actually comes from Scripture.
Right. Based on the law.
You know, so it may be, since what are we battling now? We're always going to come back to it, you know, aspects of sexuality or, you know, places in society or certain behaviors or whatever it may be, that's what social righteousness is about. But I would say that right now, for where our church is coming from, and definitely where you're coming from, the word social righteousness means probably something very different. Right.
I think I don't like the word righteousness, and so I sub it in my head.
What do you sub it for?
Justice.
Social justice.
Social justice.
And so what does that mean to you, social justice?
How much time do we have?
Just a nutshell here, just a little bit. Give us a taste.
No, I think it has a lot to do with I don't necessarily want to say righting the wrongs because that doesn't, but it's like there are certain values and rights that everyone should have direct access to.
Give me one.
Affordable housing.
Okay.
I'll give you another one. Food.
Food. You know, everyone should be able
Clean
to...
water.
Clean water. You know, that's what social righteousness looks like.
Yeah.
That people, you're back to almost basic needs.
Because it is a basic
shelter,
need thing.
Food,
right?
Clean water, clean air. You know,
right?
We should afford everybody the basics of what it needs to be alive.
Right.
And then let them do with it what they want.
Once you're alive and well, then you can thrive. Then you can see what that looks like.
Okay.
If you're nurtured, if you're fed, if you're sheltered, if you're protected from the elements, then when that stress level goes away, then you are afforded the space to then step out into
something different.
Right. What does it look like next? What's the next thing?
So what is the difference between the promotion of social righteousness or justice, if you want to change that word, and the exhibition of the kingdom of heaven to the world?
Well, my brain wants to have a moment and not understand exhibition. Is it like the showing? That's what I think of. Like an exhibit, like at the zoo. You have a zoo exhibit.
Yeah, I think showing. You know, I think the church should be a bit of a model, which again,
yes,
too often,
100%.
I would say 99.9% of the time, though, we reflect more the world than we do the church of what it should be. I mean, I think that's a constant challenge.
Yeah.
But I think it's the right challenge, because if we could be perfect, then we'd be in trouble.
Sure.
I almost feel like once we reach perfection,
right,
it immediately goes evil.
Right.
I don't know why I think that.
But I mean,
but that's kind
well,
of.
it's like it's thinking of
once we find ourselves there, then we become.
Right. Well, then you just go over the ledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like you've said a couple times, which I really like and appreciate. But it's like, if you can love your neighbor as yourself, I'll give you the next step.
Right.
But it's like you can't.
But you
can't successfully do this part to get to the next step.
To me again, it's that kind of struggle we should be showing. We should be that point. Because, I guess when I think of the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God, whichever phrase you want to use there, it's a verb instead of a noun. It is that loving your neighbor, and that being the reality of things. Yeah. Being the point of having the cross at the center is sometimes not so much about the magic of atonement, but it is the willing to give your life and to service.
Well, it's a reminder
of making the world,
it's a reminder movement, of the level of love and
that whole level of love.
Yeah.
Instead of, the magic incantation that somehow made this magically happen and that magically happened.
Right. No, yeah, it's the reminder of.
It's still discipleship.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's what it all comes back to.
It all keeps coming back to disciple. The church without discipleship is
a building.
A building or I think that's when you get into the country club church or the like we were saying before, it's either the country club or the consumer thing.
Right.
I mean, if there's not an aspect of a dynamic discipleship, then we've missed the mark. We've missed the mark.
Right.
We've become something else, something other than that.
Something I think we were never intended to be.
No.
You.
But that's you know, if we're going to be judged on something, I would rather us be judged by our ability to, what is it, shelter, nurture,
Spiritual fellowship
of the children of God. And to me, that's very disciple.
Yeah.
That I'd rather be judged there.
So we look at these as the great ends of the church,
Mm-hmm.
which, and I think we already said this, but my brain can't today for some reason. The great ends of the church. This is the big mission. This is you're going to do anything.
Do this.
Do this.
Yeah, make sure
this is.
These are the
Yeah.
If you're baking the church cake, these are the ingredients that need to be
This
in
is what
there.
you need.
Right. Stir it up.
Yeah. Well, and it covers everything you need. I think.
Mm-hmm. So in our foundations, in our polity, we do set a fairly high bar for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what's nice about having this and the other pieces that are in the foundation in our book of order, and having a book of order, I know it can be tedious and like stereo instructions sometimes, but at least there's something there that helps us ground ourselves.
Right.
It's something for us to connect to, and you know, as we've said multiple times, you know, we're not the church as in the greatest and only way the church can be, but this at least helps us to understand who we are, how we're coming to faith,
Right.
what makes us, you know, what may be different from other folks. I have a very difficult time with sort of the bland generic Christianity. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the worst concepts that's out there today, because usually when people talk about that sort of, well, aren't we all working for the same thing?
Right.
And I want to say often, you know, no.
You want to be like, we should
We're
be.
not. We should be, but we're not.
Right. We're just not there.
We're just not.
Yeah.
You know, and that's important. If we're going to have another Reformation, which I think we're due for, church needs
It's time.
It's kind of time. We have to be able to say no.
Right. You have to be honest about it.
We need to be honest.
You have to be able to go, you know, we really should be working towards the same outcome.
We should. But
we're not.
But we're not. And I think
we're not.
I think generic Christianity is one of those lies that we like to tell ourselves.
Yeah.
But I'm having a harder and harder time upholding that lie.
Viva la revolution.
So
that's what we need. We need that's
maybe.
The real deal. You need people who are willing to be the real deal.
That's right.
To bring that back to the Jesus discussion.
So
bless. Well, what a special episode of Tuesdays with Thom
and Meg.
And
we'll see you sometime next week.
Back to our regular scheduled programming.
Oh, it's the summer. It's so hard.
I know.
In and out and doing special things. In a couple of weeks, we're taking the youth to Tennessee.
Gone again. Maybe we could do a special
we should
edition
do one
with them. That's our back home group. That should be our back home group.
We'll make a Mondays with Meg and Thom with the whole group. See how they do.
Yeah, it'd be funny.
That'll be a challenge. So maybe you'll see it and maybe
Maybe
you won't.
Well, we'll see you at some point next week.